Welcome, guys. Welcome to Buddies and Blockbuster. As you know, I'm your host, AJ, and I have a big one for you for this episode. I know it's taken a while to get the next special guest, but I wanted to up the ante. You also might be wondering, why am I writing all of this? Why am I so professional for this here? Well, when you have your own boss showing up to an episode to do with you for the podcast, you got to be professional.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
And yes, I do have my boss. And, when you have a boss who vibes with you, you get him on the podcast. But aside from being my boss, he's also has a plethora of experience in the program management side as well as project management. And I really thought this would be a great, great moment for us to dive into the insights from his lens. And also, it's a successful journey, and it's a journey of over 20 years. And I believe there's a lot of folks, as well as myself, who can learn and understand what it takes to be a successful program manager. Without further ado, I would love to introduce Mr. Jonathan Blackburn, Director of Fusion Group, to this episode. So, John, I call him John or Johnny Boy. Welcome.
Either one works for me. Either one, mate.
Well, welcome to the show. I really hope you're excited. I just want to say that I really appreciate the fact that you took the time. I know your calendar, you have like a bunch of meetings, but the fact that you chose to share some of your time to share your experience and journey is really appreciated. So I hope you're excited.
I am. And that calendar actually is mainly full of meetings that I have with you.
Partners for life.
At Metro City.
But it also feels like from the introduction I'm having a positive influence. So I'm delighted to be here, and anything I can do to share my insights, and really that's what it is. It's my insights and experience. Maybe not so much right or wrong answers, but an opportunity to go through some of the wonderful experiences I've had in my career, and also maybe shed a bit of light on some of those moments where I've learned a few lessons as well.
For sure. So before, the format about this is, I usually ask a couple of questions. It's me being quiet and listening to you, which is usually the case in the office as well.
That for everyone. That's not true. That's not true.
No, but it's actual, tangible, and insightful information and advice that I get from this guy. That's always been the case. But before we dive into it, John, you want to give like a high level introduction about what you do? It can be candid. It can be like hobbies or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so John Blackburn, and Director of the Program Management Office in Dallas, Texas for Fusion Group, as AJ alluded to earlier. And 8 years have been, almost 9 coming up actually in the US. 20 years that you reminded me of how old I now am. 9 of those have actually been on a different continent to where I was born, which was actually in the north of England. So when you talk about the journey, we're talking about this young kid from rural north of England who, I'm not going to say from a young age had dreams and aspirations of becoming a project manager, but somewhere along the line that definitely transpired. When we talk about dreams and aspirations, talk about hobbies, sport absolutely dominates my life to the extent that, in fact, the hobby, I think a lot of the time actually overlaps and overlays with my profession. You've probably heard, AJ, a number of analogies that I bring that have like a team and sporting theme to it, and it is because for a long time, as when I was growing up, football, soccer has been, a big part of my life. My team, Liverpool, have been a big part of my life. And,
oh wait, I thought it was Man United.
Yeah. I'm keeping a log of all these moments. Don't you worry. We've still got to work together. But no, it's interesting. Some of the experiences that you go through in your professional career. You spend so much time at work, and you can't help but to have this kind of merging of real life and everything that goes on day to day with your working life. And like I said, Sport is a big part of that. But I have also a young family and a wife who's from the US, and both of my sons will not have this strong Northern English accent, which I'm very much devastated about. But I also think it's been a great experience, and I love life in the US, and I love the job that I do, and all the roads that have led here, because it has been quite a journey. So yeah,
Nice.
That's a little bit about me.
That's the first time you answered so fast. Well, okay.
Well, I have all kinds of things I could say about me.
No, you're good.
But we might need to stop there.
But before we dive into the questions, John, I think it's a good starting point. There's this misconception there, right? And I want to clear, and because you have so much experience, it'll be good for you to share high-level detail about what is the difference between, program management and project management, right? Because not a lot of folks know about program management. They believe both of them are the same, and it's no different, right? What do you think is the difference, and why should it be distinctive?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I'll talk a little bit about kind of textbook theory and how it shapes and continues to shape and influence different organizational approach to project or program management. One of the things that I've seen, particularly in the US, is just this readiness and the speed of which is quite fascinating, that we jump on program manager as a position in an organization. Not to say that in many cases it's needed and required, but it feels as though we've reached this stage where project management is now redundant and is obsolete, and in fact we're now in a program management world. I don't necessarily believe that's the case, and I think it would be a wrong move if it was the case. But traditional thinking would tell you, right, a program, a collection of projects that share an objective, an end goal, that ultimately, under that theme, under that banner of the program, you can have a multitude of projects that you would undertake. And in many cases, you would have multiple project managers taking on those different tasks within a program. Not always, because it of course depends on the size, scope, and type of organization. And in fact, I think where we've been missing a trick, and you know this well because we're going through our own journey in terms of software and what PPM and the portfolio element brings to the game. That's where I think attention needs to be paid at the portfolio level, particularly for businesses that break themselves down into business units, business areas, and this opportunity to look at multiple programs within a portfolio that are satisfying perhaps different industries, different verticals, different types of customers. And maybe there's a call out in the future that we move towards, PMO directors and leaders of project management organizations and offices that have in fact run portfolios for global businesses, and do that with program managers running multiple projects, which is again what I think is the real the fundamentals behind what we're trying to do with portfolio, program, and project. But yeah, and I know you probably get sick of me talking about the big difference, but it is something that's interesting. I think sometimes it's not a conscious act that an organization or even individuals get confused with it. I think it's just the natural way that perhaps we've amplified the role of projects in an organization, to the extent that programs are the only way that we now are able to accomplish these large-scale changes and large-scale implementations and transformative pieces of work.
Yeah, and I think it strongly goes from the organization itself and the way how they input and the way how they see the distinction between the two of them. Not everybody can have AJ and John, right? So.
Well, and not everybody wants it, but it You've honestly, you've hit on something there, and I think it's really interesting to think about. What does an individual go through when they consider, are they a program manager?
Yep.
And I think, do you know what the big piece of it is? It's the way in which we now approach accreditation, training, and this idea that project management has elevated itself in the last decade. You know, if I think back to when I began working on projects as a junior project manager, it was often viewed as something that you gave to somebody that maybe nobody else wanted, and it was like, it was a way of almost proving yourself inside organizations to, hey, give this guy or this girl a project, let them go after it, let them prove themselves. And it's slowly started to become something that organizations see as important, but there are a different set of skills at program level than at project level. And I think you're right from what you said from the outset there, that it's probably a bit of a blurred distinction, and that the organizations dictate that.
Got it. Now, let's kind of transition to the main event, which is your journey, right? And I wanted to start from the back, like right off the back, about the global experience that you have. Kind of a key question would be, what are those lessons that you learned during these projects that you went through from a global standpoint, and how did that affect your approach in program management now?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, this, because it's funny, because I never considered this idea that, you know, I would become a manager of global projects, that I would be part of global programs, and that would essentially be my role inside of an organization. And look, right, if you to talk about this and give, again, like textbook response, perhaps the response that many businesses and many recruiters are looking for, they would talk to you a lot, or would expect you to talk about large scale global coverage in terms of geographics. They would talk to you about dealing with people from different cultures, backgrounds, different businesses and their philosophies and ways of working. They would talk to you a lot about perhaps supply chain as part of a global effort, as we experience every single day in the company we work for today. It's very easy, though, to assume global as complex. Talk about that, because I remember in the early part of my career with Trelleborg Offshore. They're a manufacturer of high performance sealing solutions in oil and gas industry. You could get such a diverse range of projects, some of which you would be supplying products for 3 to 5 years into Africa, that was manufactured in Europe, that was getting parts and components from Asia, that had design input from Central Europe going into the UK, getting processed in America. Complex, large scale, 50 to 100 team members, right? So if we'd package up global projects, global programs, there's some of the reasons why we would classify it in that way. But guess what? Sometimes the product was pretty standard, and the manufacturing process was pretty straightforward. And basically what you were doing is you were meeting delivery dates over a 2-3 year period, and you'd churn out the product. And would you call that a project? Would you call that a program? Yeah, I mean, finite detail around delivery, finite detail around the planning piece, and lots of different layers to it. But sometimes complexity can come from small orders that are highly customized, that maybe we've never made before. I remember taking on one of my first projects for Trelleborg, and it being an order for less than 50k, being for I think 10 units, and to this day I still see it as the hardest project. And it wasn't because it was an early scope that I had to manage, but it was customized design, a really difficult customer that was constantly pivoting in terms of what the solution should be. And having this complete awareness of the difficulty that we were facing. And there's nothing more that grounds you as a human being when you are fully aware that you are not getting closer to a resolution. You just feel, completely helpless at times. And I can imagine that that's how a lot of people can feel in projects because of the demands that a customer or anybody can place on you. And so I have this belief that you consider complexity in different ways, and that in fact it would be wrong of us to assume that at the global level things get more complex. I honestly believe sometimes they get a bit easier, particularly when you consider the reach in terms of resources and intellect that you can pull in from different parts of an organization. Global tends to mean bigger in terms of how you approach it, the mindset that you take as an organization. And a lot of the time could just mean simply that you're supplying to a business that has a global reach, and I've worked with many and continue to do so. But the biggest part of this conversation for me has always been about the ability to impress on a customer that in spite of the global nuances that can come with running a project like the ones that we've just spoken about, they still have this feeling that it's like this local connection, this local relationship. Global, local, we used to talk a lot about that in a previous organization I worked in. And it was this feeling that you had that power, you had that engine that was international, that you could pull in the people, the resources, the supply chain network, and everything that comes with it. But at the same time, the relationship felt like you had somebody in your office working with you day to day. And almost to the extent where part of my experience has been literally to do that. And so, in the oil and gas industry, it was commonplace for project managers to almost live and work with their customers at times, because it was this need to constantly feel like you were aligned, and there was a synchronization that was occurring between the two businesses. Criticality of your solution and what you're supplying often drove that, because you simply did not have time. When problems and issues arose, you had to rise to those challenges, and you had to be very responsive. And so that's one of the big things that I took away from my experience of working in these international projects and programs. So
I thought our projects right now was complex, but this is a whole new level. So,
yeah.
And just to kind of piggyback of the Trailbot experience, I know you've shared this with me during our one-on-ones, but also I stalked you in LinkedIn. and I see what was really impressive was you had multiple roles there, like whether it's getting promoted to the next level or going to a different sector or a segment. Can you speak towards those diverse roles and how it kind of cultivated you to become who you are right now? Because I'm pretty sure you had to use maybe different strategies based on the circumstances that you were in. And do you still use that in your current role? That would be good to know.
Yeah. There's a piece of this that I think initially I was underprepared for. So I began my career. I came out of university, and look, being completely honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do. No idea whatsoever. And in fact, I went to A good university, Loughborough in Leicestershire. More well known for its sport than anything else, but has established itself with a 2-2 degree. Nothing spectacular. It's probably a little bit bitter about not making it in football, in soccer, and being at least in that field and in that industry in some capacity. I always saw that being part of my future. It was actually a moment with a tutor. It was quite a turning point in my life, in fact, interestingly enough, where she kind of looked at me and said, look, you're kind of just meandering to a point of which it's fine when you're 20, 21, but very soon you're going to be 22, 23, and your peers and those around you are going to be ahead of you, and you're going to find yourself in a position where your options become more limited. And so I didn't say anything at the time. I was probably annoyed, you know. That was the type of 21-year-old I was at the time.
Yeah,
but I came like most. I came away from it and actually thought about it and said to myself, she's right. And so start thinking, John, about what you might do next. And I knew my degree wasn't going to be the answer, irrespective of, you know, how well I'd performed with that particular degree. I knew that there would have to be something else, and I made a choice at the tail end of my degree course to actually go through the Prince 2 course, and I'll talk a little bit about that one later on. But it set me off on a path for the first time in my life, really, outside of being, you know, a sports player. This was the first time I had like a goal and a pathway to something else. And so in completing my degree, I actually had to go home. I had to go back to the north of England, and because, you know, applying for different positions wasn't really working out, and I ended up getting on a graduate scheme for a company called James Walker, quite a big global company. Not many people have heard of it, but they actually are a competitor of Trelleborg, interestingly enough, which the two tie together for no specific reason, but that's another story. And I got into this job, and it was a graduate development scheme. Companies in Cumbria in the north of England, they don't really have graduate development schemes, and so it was almost like I was making my own scheme up as I was going along. And the interesting thing was, I found myself pulling in this learning around projects and project management, because they were very much committed to lean manufacturing, which in 2005 onwards started to gain a lot of momentum in the UK, particularly in manufacturing, of course. And so there was 1,000 projects to do, and I jumped into every single one of them, because it was that piece of me that was competitive, that had a bit of edge, that liked leading teams, that liked, you know, putting myself in the position of leadership. And all of a sudden, it started to dawn on me that, like, I have this set of skills. I've always had it, and there's a field that I can use it in that can be something that's progressive in terms of my career. And from that moment onwards, I was very committed to this idea that I have to learn from everybody I come into contact with. And the first group of people that I learned from today, I don't think I've had that much of an enriching learning experience than when I went into a manufacturing environment with probably 10 to 12 production operatives that were manufacturing seals for the sealing industry, seals that would be used, called O-rings, that would go into jump jets. So when we talk about criticality of application, you know, a person would look at an O-ring and look at it as just a piece of plastic, it's a ring, that's it. What it was used for, everybody on that production line was very aware of. And so there was this kind of tribal culture that existed within the production cell. They were very proud of their product. And John comes in, hey, let's do a project. It was like, who are you? It was like, what do you want? And we're really busy and we've got stuff to do. And that experience of them talking to me about what really mattered to them, and how, honestly, John, we don't want a project, we don't want to focus on improvement, we just want to do our job and we just want to go home. It gave me something to think about in terms of, okay, how do I convince this group of individuals that there is benefit in what I'm about to help them do? You know, you go, that wasn't just, there were multiple times where I had this experience at James Walker's, moving into Siemens, to Trelleborg, and even, you know, in the last few years with Neiman Marcus and with Fusion Group, all these moments where you're challenged in terms of what value are you going to bring to me? What is it that actually I get benefit from? And most importantly, how are we going to work together to actually achieve something? And that piece of it started very early on in my career, and I carried it through. It was always this effort to connect with people, to feel their problem, to feel their pain, and then start to create a solution that was shared. It wasn't me coming in and saying, let's run a project, let's do it this way. It was actually always about the determination of what value was in the perception of the user or in the perception of the customer. And it's a transformative moment in your thought process, but also in your career, because that's what I use now. I don't have any other way of looking at it other than to say my answer is one answer. There are hundreds out there that have, you know, additional thoughts and ideas, and you've got to tap into it. Program project management, there's a way that you can tap into it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. When it comes to people, and we were talking about this today as well, that you've got to have the connection and build that relationship to move forward, regardless of how good of a PM or a program manager that you can be. If you don't have that piece, I think any project or program would fail.
It's true, and you see the businesses change. The idea that you join in a company now and you spend 20, 30, 40 years in it, it's gone. It doesn't exist. And there are positives around that. Don't get me wrong, but it's this interesting thing that I've seen going, you know, from James Walker going into a Siemens organization that was significantly different in its approach, and being in a business that had a lot of structure, that had a lot of intent about what it stood for, and what it meant to be part of that company, and then being in a Trelleborg machine that just seemed to have this knack and ability to always come up with the right solutions at the right time, and still does. But the one constant was always this feeling that what you're trying to do is unlock potential in people. Like you should go into any project, anywhere in the world, in any company, and the first thing you should be doing is saying to yourself, who are the people that are going to be part of this with me? And sometimes they're already there, they're pre-existing, and maybe they've had a previous project manager, maybe they've had previous leaders. Sometimes you're building a team, you know, and you're starting from scratch, and sometimes you've got to make tough decisions. You've got to change people out of a team. But it's this almost gravitational pull that exists within my approach, which is people will be the determination of success or failure. And I think a big part of knowing that is actually being able to transfer that emotion and that feeling to all the people around you. Because, you know, having that self-awareness, having that belief that, yeah, if I do a good job of leading people, that's going to make the difference between winning and losing. Well, that's the start of it, because that unlocking of potential we talk about, and that tapping into the intellectual capacity that exists within a person, it takes work, it takes effort, and I can even recall on projects, particularly in my time with Trelleborg, where I spent a decade over the course of 3 different business areas, offshore, industrial, and then healthcare and medical. What I noticed in particular, because I was pulling on people from within the Trelleborg business, I could go into a project with a set of team members that I would utilize in the future, and our relationship would change, it would evolve, and it would be really based around this understanding of how we work together and how we get the best out of each other. And that's always been, you know, a priority for me. And I think, you know, if you look at any organization that is successful, they put people at the heart of it. And so why would a project be any different?
Very well said. Now, there's one piece that was surprising when you told about your college time and you were not that good and stuff like that. But for a guy who says that and has the plethora of certifications, that's different, right? I wanted to know, one, like, do you believe all of those certifications are something really useful that you use throughout your whole experience? And plus, I'm pretty sure that folks like myself or other people who are in the program management, project management space,
yeah,
what kind of certifications would be like absolutely essential to be successful based on your experience?
Well, I'm gonna get honest here.
Yeah.
Which, you know is my go-to.
Yep.
I have this feeling around certification. It's probably around education in general, and it's probably to do with the fact that maybe I underachieved. So maybe there's a part of my emotion and recollection coming through. But I think the big thing for me is that you have to have this inherent set of core skills, and if they're not there, or if it's not necessarily that they're evident immediately, but if you don't have that kinetic energy around certain skills that are required in this domain, in this field, I don't think any textbook or any test is going to put you in a strong position. I really don't. Now, that being said, I will completely contradict myself because, and we have this conversation, and you and I talk a lot about, you know, what matters in terms of professional development, and I think they can become this phenomenal enhancement of an individual, where the way I look at it, right, and this all started when I first began looking at lean manufacturing, because one of the things about lean manufacturing is, and it's a really important part, is that you don't go into an organization and try to adopt every single component part of a lean manufacturing philosophy. You know, we would, I personally had roles early on in my career where I would essentially conduct a diagnostic of some of the largest businesses in the world. Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Cadbury, people like that, and go in and you would conduct what's called a reader plant fast. It was an ability that within a half day you could diagnose some of the main issues that a manufacturing plant would have. It could be to do with they don't have single single piece flow in manufacturing. They haven't adopted single minute exchange of die, SMED activity. It could be just a review of process steps. But we didn't then say, right, in the next 12 months, you've got to do all of this stuff and you're going to be good at what you do, because that's the way it works. The first 12 months, we'd say to them, do you know what? We're gonna put you into work cells. We're gonna have a look at the process steps, and we're gonna get a continuous improvement team going. That's our goal to start with. And so, in my mind, I was like, why wouldn't we do everything? There's loads. It's like, because there's a change management element to this, and there's an ability for a human being to only absorb so much within a given amount of time. So when I look at the educational piece, and you could probably apply this across the board, but let's focus in on project management. You have to set your stall out with a core set of skills. 3 things that start this whole fire, I think, in an individual. Number 1, resilience. If you haven't got resilience, don't go looking for it in a book. It doesn't exist. There is a part of being a project manager that is about just this will and desire, and it can come in different ways. It isn't outward sometimes. It isn't visible, but sometimes it's just a person's ability and tenacity to get through things, to feel like, yeah, you can throw that at me, but I'm going to come back stronger, and I'm going to show you that there is a way to get this done. Because there's probably 1,000 people out there that'll tell you you can't do it, and that resilience is a core innate ability I think most top-level PMs possess. But number 2, I think, is this this unwillingness to accept defeat and accept failure. And it also, for me, is about sometimes being in a position where failure becomes part of your process. In the idea that a human being will go through setbacks, will be able to have that resilience, but actually thrive and enjoy the moments where it doesn't work, and then refuse to say, oh well, we're done. And I think that for me is such a big part of the makeup of a project manager, that again, you don't necessarily get told that in a class or take that in a test, and it's a real pointer I found when I've been talking to other PMs in different roles, that, hey, you know, enjoy some of those moments where it goes wrong, because you use it. You know, it sticks with you, and you prepare better next time, or you learn something and it actually improves your situation. The final bit, and then I will answer your question. It is, and we spoke about it, in fact, and we talk about this probably daily, is that there is nothing more important than the consideration of people and what they bring to projects. I want to talk about this one though now in terms of emotional intelligence part, because you do find a lot about people management in project management training. I personally, Prince 2, the projects in a controlled environment, is more textbook and it has been updated to reflect some of the people management pieces and components. But I first had the exposure to this through the Association for Project Management practitioner course in the UK, which is one of the UK's biggest programs, which I took while I was at Siemens. And there was a lot that makes up that particular accreditation that's around people and team management and communications and all of those great things. PMI, the Project Management Institute, where you can do the APMP type courses in the US. Very committed, very honest about the need for people and people management. But there's a piece of this that you know, so unique and so different depending on the people you're working with and the organization that you're working for. And every single day, this reminder that a person can have a bad morning, a bad week, can sometimes have a problem with somebody else, maybe in the business, maybe out of the business. You've got to be the person that knows it. You've got to be the individual that can sense it, and that maybe you have to change the way you work just for that 1 hour meeting, or just for that 10-minute conversation, or maybe for that entire day, which personally I've experienced. I find it utterly fascinating because there's a psychology behind it that's where the training and education needs to be. The human psychology behind how we face up to those difficulties, and sometimes have to be a different individual for the benefit of the team. Almost social chameleon element to the way in which a project manager has to go about their work. And I think the very best do it without even thinking. It's like this trigger set off, and I'm not good at a lot of things in life, but I do have that trigger. I do have that sense, if you like, of when there is a need to be a different version of myself for the benefit of a team member or the benefit of a team as a whole. These innate, these inherent core skills, and again, they need to be honed. They don't just appear one day. They need to be honed. I think there are lots of great PMs out there that have them, that maybe don't pay enough attention to them and the growing of them. I do believe that the pieces around the certification and the training, they're an enhancement to those skills. They give you things that allow you to be better at what you do. And they also give you a structure and process, which I'm very much a big fan of. But it's very important. And you know, again, you and I have spoken a lot about this, and these are the areas that matter in terms of how we go about personal development. And I think that that's the type of culture, particularly in setting up PMOs, that I've tried to promote, which is around, okay, what do we have to work with that we can build on and enhance and bring in some of those different perspectives and different trainings.
So I had hope initially when he said, "Oh, there's no certification." I thought, okay, I don't need PPM.
Well, I mean, you know, this is the world we live in, unfortunately, today, and it's one of those situations where we find ourselves in corporate culture now that is, well, you know, if we don't have this, then that somehow defines our future almost, you know, and I think it's a little bit sad in a way, you know, that we've reached that point. But I do believe that a lot of it is down to, you know, what, 17 million project managers in the world today. I believe that number's probably gone above 20 million plus. So you've got this need now to understand, well, how do we get to the great? You know, when there's that many, and I think it's part of that process of understanding what are the levels, you know, that we're now looking at.
Got it. Yeah, and you know, I would like to move to the next question. This is something that I really is kind of my favorite question, mainly because you're one of the only persons. I mean, I know a couple of them, but you've had transitions across the board in different industries, right? You went from oil and gas, you know, healthcare management, and now retail. For the normal audience, if you think about it, that's three distinct different industries, right? But you've told me a lot of times that it's all kind of the same. It's about the way how you manage it. Can you talk through how you balanced out, and obviously how did you be sane throughout all these transitions?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you touched on it there in the my go-to has always been this idea that project process remains relatively stable no matter what industry you go in. You know, this idea that, you know, you assemble a team with a set of objectives, you build a plan, you execute the plan, you deliver on your customer or business expectations, and you reflect and you learn. Sounds easy, doesn't it? The thing is that project world, as much as companies have tried, they've tried this transformational approach, agile. I'm not gonna get on my soapbox about agile waterfall because we definitely would be here all day. I get it, right? Awesome. We're doing sprint work. We're learning things fast. We're moving on. We're getting results. We're moving on. Okay, fine. Still the same effort. Still the same. And, you know, got Scrum Masters going on now. Lots of different stuff happening there. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful experience. I just believe we're actually making all of this more difficult than it really is. And again, you know me. I'm always willing to be shot down, and have been many times. But I think it's still all within the same build out of knowing what it is that we are aspiring to, and whether that's driven by a customer demand, a business requirement, a department head need, a CEO's wish or vision. We're always looking to define and understand what the problem or the challenge or the opportunity might be, who it is that will help us to go and achieve it, in what time frame do we feel like we can do it, what problems and issues might we face along the way, what potential returns and value do we bring, and at different moments this recognition that the landscape changes, and that's okay, and that we can react to it, and that we can be different sometimes in the way we go about and approach the execution. And so all of these things that have come into the industry are fantastic, and they bring value, but principally and at heart, it's the same. It's people getting things done for the benefit of a business or an individual, and for us all to realize that it's not one person that's going to get it done. Again, you know, I know I've gone the long way around, as I always do, but the essence of going into different industries, if I look at oil and gas, right? Really interesting part about oil and gas is heavily regulated, massive amounts of processes, procedures, legislation, political influence. I mean, going through a pestle analysis against some of the projects we would do, unbelievable. Sometimes you probably look at it and go, why are we doing this? You know, I mean, liquidated damages left, right, and center, time of the essence clauses everywhere. And we loved every minute of it. And it was because actual process and procedure gave you comfort, it gave you security. It felt like you knew what you were doing. And the big ask was getting a team to interpret it that way. I mean, it's all too mechanical, John. You're putting me in a box. Sometimes that's what's necessary. You also have to be fully aware of the autonomy you have to give team members, particularly that, you know, have specialist responsibilities like in design and test. But there's still control mechanisms in place, and all of my teachings and learnings have been about control mechanisms within projects, particularly around risk. The interesting thing of moving into healthcare and medical in particular, well, guess what happened? It was the same kind of thing. It was this idea that it was heavily regulated, lots of controls, lots of legislation, lots of really red tape and bureaucracy at times that you had to navigate. And I absolutely loved it because I was like, oh, I know this stuff. This is exactly where I've been before. But then the really interesting bit was like, and I took a leap of faith, honestly, AJ. I mean, it was probably like this moment. I think I even sat there at one point and I was like, what are you doing? What, like, you're moving out of healthcare and medical. The business was growing rapidly. Yep. And like, to the extent, right, that I'll tell you this is hot off the press. The individual that took my job in healthcare and medical in my last position before I moved into retail, is now president of the business unit of medical solutions.
What? Oh,
and so you know, it wasn't an easy decision. It was a big moment in my career, and it was this feeling that I was going away from everything I knew and understood about project management. I went into luxury retail. I mean, you know, it was a real kind of eye-opener for me that I saw all the same problems. So yeah, the projects had a different tint to them. There was definitely this feel where it perhaps wasn't as pressurized, because a lot of it was internal improvement projects. There was a lot of customer and vendor type activities going on as well, and a lot of transformative programs that needed taken care of. But it was the same stuff. We can't get the best out of our teams. They're not following process. We can't make decisions about what project to do first, and that one's failing, and we don't know why. Well, you haven't done your risk management, which nobody seems to do, and it was like, this isn't any different. This is exactly that. I've literally just moved from one team's meeting to another team's meeting talking about the same stuff. And so there was something really comforting about it. You were kind of, you had this feeling that I've got this set of skills and it doesn't matter what you throw at me. I'm gonna be able to perform. I'm gonna be able to take them into different environments. And then of course, you know, you get to the point where I'm at today, and you see every day what we're trying to build. And like, you probably have heard all those things I've talked about and gone, yeah, John and I talk about this all the time. You know, this is what we do. You know, is that we take a business, any business, forget about the product or the solution, and just go, what is it that will make us better? What is it that is existing within the business that doesn't work, that we have to change, and what do we have to bring in that will enhance our ability to meet customer expectations? And here we are today, and what do we land on? What are the things, the big topics that you and I talk about in our business? How do we get more out of our people? How do we communicate better with our people? How do we get team members to understand what it is we're trying to do? And I was having those conversations 20 years ago.
Well, you heard it from here, folks. Just have the skills, and you can conquer any industry.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like I said, it's never a case of they're evident immediately. You know, I mean, from your own personal experience, if I look at from October to now, and look at the way in which, you know, as an individual, you've grown in a short space of time, because guess what? As a business, we needed it. And the demands were placed, and you had a little bit of pressure, a little bit of test. And it was this idea that, yeah, he's got it. We just need to unlock it, release it, and sometimes just set it free. And that's a big part of this belief that you instill in individuals. You know, projects or otherwise, it's so important, because, you know, if we go all the way back to our first topic of conversation, global, international, huge projects, multiple team members. Well, you have that because you need it. So don't you know, sell yourself short by not using the people that you know, assign to these big projects and programs. Let them go do what they need to do, and sometimes let them fail at it. Let them enjoy that piece of it and learn from it. And Um, honestly, there aren't many businesses that'll take that attitude and approach.
Totally agree. And the final question, and I'm gonna dim it down before the fun segment.
I thought this was this was the fun
Okay.
segment for me.
You're the director of program management now at Fusion Group, you know, and you know you're already doing a lot of stuff in this short period of time with the firm. But what is, and I know you have experience of 20 years and stuff, but this is not the end. There's so much more for you, right?
Thank you. I was doubting myself for a moment. You know, because I don't seem to have the confidence necessary.
No, we need you. So so how do you like your current role? And you know you asked me this in my own interview. Where do you see yourself? I'm not gonna put years, but you know, where do you see yourself in the future?
Well, well, well. How the turntables.
I think a big part of where I am today is such an exciting time. I mean, I honestly, you know, I mentioned earlier this idea that you don't grow up aspiring to be a project manager. Now, if I look at like what I've been able to achieve, there's a sense of pride in being able to do what I do and still learn and understand that like it's never enough. That there's always a new demand and there's always a need for you to improve. And like I learn from everybody around me, and I think that's what I want to continue to do. The big step for me now is I've definitely put myself in a position in the last decade in setting up project management organizations, project management offices on a global scale. I'm feeling very much at ease with it, feeling like it's part of, you know, what I enjoy doing, but also what I was kind of called to do. But the next thing for me now is really to take on roles that perhaps have more responsibility, more scope of responsibility, perhaps at a national level, and being able to influence more of the organization with the types of things that we do more locally today, and maybe more focused on particular customers, as you well know. So the future is very bright in terms of this organization, which I think it opens up a lot of opportunities to grow with the business. Use that experience, use that feeling that, okay, there's a massive amount of potential in the organization today, that we haven't quite landed on every part of what it is that makes us great or will make us great. Being a driving force, particularly around the strategic intent. Programs have taught me, because of the true definition, collections of different projects for a common purpose and goal. Programs have taught me that, you know, strategic initiatives and strategic objectives have to have that level of oversight and management, because what you know, strategy is supposed to be this idea that you have a common purpose and goal that brings big advancement in terms of a company's progression. And so that's another piece of what I feel our organization and any business should be considering is part of the PMO, is part of program management, is strategic initiatives. It's definitely been something that businesses have paid attention to in the last decade. I was a director of strategic initiatives for a period of time, and realized it was an add-on to what I was doing within project and program management. So that's a next step thing for me, and I feel like what we will be looking at in the future, and particularly what I will be looking at personally, is how to have this positive impact and influence on an organization on a transformative level. Not just through accounts and customers, but through the idea that we have to make leaps now into a different stratosphere of business performance.
I guess I'm sorted, right? Because as long as John and AJ are together, we'll conquer the world.
Well, that's I mean, that's pretty much our mission statement, isn't it? Well, that's our vision.
Yeah,
Well,
that's how we start every meeting.
Yeah, that's our new mantra.
But that wraps up the questions, and I hope the viewers, my buddies here, have enjoyed your insights and experience. And something, it's not just about the experience, it's about learning and kind of taking that advice and initiating it, as well as putting it in your own ways and making that a takeaway would be helpful. Hopefully it is, right? But we're not done. The movie's not over. We have a fun segment, and guess what, John? I literally had cue cards made for this.
Do I get paid overtime for this bit then? What's
Oh my
deal?
god! I need to get paid overtime. So this is the first of its kind. We're gonna have a fun rapid fire round with my boss.
Okay.
And again, John, no filter. Again, it can be either quick responses. A couple of questions might need a bit more time. It's all good, but you've got to answer it. No escaping. All right.
Okay, I'll give it my best shot. I mean, I feel like this is the most amount of pressure I've ever been under in my career. So let's go.
All right. So since you're a huge soccer fan, this is an obvious question: Messi or Ronaldo? Be careful.
Messi.
Oh my god. Okay.
100%. Ronaldo played for Man United. There's no chance I can say Ronaldo. He's an idiot.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You've just lost all your Man United fans, but gained all your Liverpool fans. So it's probably a 1-for-1 trade-off. You're all right.
So a follow-up about Man United fans. So you have three options: Man United, Everton, or social media trolls. Who is the worst rival for Liverpool?
Man United. It's always been so easy with Everton for the last 30 plus years because they never win anything. So it was an easy rivalry, but for Man United it was, I mean, I would say 20 years of my life was just utter torture. So
yeah,
it's a lot better
they're
now.
The GOAT.
Yeah,
they're the GOAT.
Yeah, well, moving on.
Okay, now you got to think about this carefully. All right, this depends on a lot. Am I your best associate of all time? And be careful, because if you don't answer yes, I'm not working tomorrow.
Yes.
Wow. Well,
I mean,
I'm crying on the inside.
I gave the necessary answer to ensure productivity was maintained.
I wanted more like appreciation
AJ,
and love, but no. But okay.
AJ, I will tell you now, you have the world at your feet. Now you just have to go and do a few kick-ups with it.
Yeah. All good. Now, this is going to be a controversial question for the family. All right.
Oh.
It's about your kids. You have two of them. Number one and number two. Who do you prefer?
You're a monster.
Well, I've already said this to my wife, and it's a bit of an unfair advantage that the older one has, because I feel like, you know me, I like to have conversations, I like to talk, I like to tell people things. Well, Elias, the older one, who's 3.5, just a little bit older than that, he can talk back, and he actually asks me questions, and he wants me to talk. Whereas Ezra, he's kind of just like spitting stuff out of his mouth at the moment, and it's not really the type of engagement that I'm looking for. So, it's an easy one. But if you ask me again in 5 years, it could be a difficult proposition for me, that one.
I hope the wife doesn't kill you, but okay.
She will anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Now this is an this is an easy one for you. Tea or coffee?
Neither. Never tasted either one.
British.
British.
No, actually, I'm English.
British. Yeah, I don't like hot drinks. I've told you this one. It's like it's a phobia of some kind. I don't know if it's got a true definition behind it, but I'm sure it does.
Got it. Okay. Biggest misconception that people have on PMs like us.
I would say this role, this field, is not a specialist field in the sense that, you know, like I mentioned earlier, didn't I? This idea, and it has changed. Don't get me wrong, but where it was like, oh, we've got a project, give it to somebody who needs something to do. I think the misconception has always been that project management is fairly easy. I think you and I can attest to the fact that.
No, hell no.
Nope. It's definitely not.
An ego check for you. Your biggest project flop that you would rather forget.
Oh, I had a couple, to be honest. Yeah. And it's like I said, you learn so much from it. And the first one, when I mentioned to you earlier, that was about the thriving in failure, is what I was wanting to say, and blurted out a lot of other words. But the thriving in failure, it didn't happen the first time. Like I literally ordered the wrong against the wrong SKU, because this was a time when you had to load in the part into ERP. So which created demand in manufacturing. So manufacturing made the wrong product. Then we delivered the wrong product to the customer, who was a huge customer. It was a small project, but it was a huge customer who needed it to be on time. Otherwise, it was going to hold up a whole other project. It could not have gone any worse. And the customer dressed me down so much that my boss had to step in and say, okay, I think we've got the picture. He got it wrong.
Don't fail me again.
Okay.
And it was a failure on my part. And I was moving too quickly, trying to do too much. But at the end of the day, my process steps failed me. But it was definitely and it was on oil and gas, which was a humbling experience for me. But like I said, I learned to thrive in the failure on other opportunities.
Yeah, it's a good saying. You got to learn from your mistakes, and that's how you grow. So, and the best thing about working in the U.S.
I honestly, in all seriousness, I honestly believe the ability to have access to so many different types of opportunities. If I'd have stayed in Europe or the UK in particular, I would not have been able to have made the types of moves that I've made in the different roles that I've had.
Got it. Worst thing about missing the UK?
Chocolate hobnobs. Or Greg's.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, I mean, it's people, you know, like there's this part of this job, right, that it gives you this almost this thicker skin when it comes to relationships. Now, all that stuff I talked about building and connecting, I did that for a decade or more in the UK, you know, and I'm the type of person, I go all in, you know, with the connections I build and the relationships I have.
Well, that's good.
Sorry, this was supposed to be quick fire, wasn't it? I didn't really,
it was quick fire. Now this is like long fire. So the next piece is, do you fancy a pint after work or a shot? Sambuca.
Sambuca. Nobody said Sambuca to me in 9 years.
Really?
I don't think they have any. Yeah. Oh, it's always a pint. Always a pint.
Controversial one. and be careful. We might get Scrum Master trolls in the comments. Agile versus waterfall.
Hybrid.
Okay.
And
All right,
I did say the value was there. I just feel like we're losing a little bit of sight of what it all means ultimately.
We're still gonna get the trolls, man.
Yeah, I know.
So from Top Gun, I'm pretty sure you've seen that movie, right?
Oh yes.
Are you more of a Maverick or an Iceman PM?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'd have to go Maverick.
Oh, cliche, yeah.
Well, I just yeah, it's a tough one, that one, because I don't know if either would apply, but I would go Maverick.
And I don't know if you want to answer this, but what is one deal breaker during an interview that you would just immediately reject the candidate?
Ooh. Well, yeah, this could be a few tips for the upcoming interviews. if they're one of your subscribers. I honestly, I'll give you an example to explain.
Another one. Another one. Another one.
So, a pet peeve of mine is this inability to follow the agreed direction that we're going to take. So what happens is, commonly, I will end up saying, okay, run me through the highlights of your resume, right? And then somebody reads every line of the resume, and not only that, adds a little bit of flavor, a little bit of magic dust on top of that. And you lose time when really the resume portion, as laid out, is this idea of, hey, give me the highlights. Let's talk some real stuff soon. Let's not waste an hour on this, because I know you've got what it takes from a resume standpoint, but let's connect with each other. And so it often tells you this is the sell. And if that's the sell, I can't help you.
I mean, that's a good one. I'm glad I didn't do that, and that's why
you didn't. You were actually one of my best interviews. I will give you that compliment.
Oh yeah. Let's cue the music.
X gon' give it to you. Fuck, wait for you to get it on your own. X gon' deliver to you. Knock knock.
In the last 12 months.
What?
Okay, I thought of all time. Jesus Christ. And the last question is for me, because I got to answer this, is John Blackburn the best PM of them all?
Give me a hell yeah.
A hell yeah.
In the last 12 months.
Of all time. Of all time.
Okay. I'll take it.
But guys, I hope you enjoyed this fun, insightful experience, and I really want to appreciate, John, your time, because you shared a lot, and that's really appreciative. Not everybody does this, and trust me, not every boss is okay to just come on to a podcast.
Yeah,
so I just want you to know that I'm humbly, really, I love you, man. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No problem, and I love this. I honestly, it says a lot to your character. It says a lot about who you are. I think this is you're great at it. You're in your element, and it's part of what makes you a tremendous asset to our company. So keep going with it, because it's good stuff.
Awesome. And guys, if you have any questions or not concerns, you can put it down in the comments, and I'll be sure to have John answer them as and when needed. And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, and share, as we got to keep growing as always. Thank you.